Good evening. This is the January 9th, 2020 meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Ellen McKay.
Here.
Tanya Hickok.
Here.
Dale Smythe.
Here.
Stephanie Eicher.
Here.
Dave Hale.
Here.
Monica Emerton.
Here.
Jonathan Lang.
Here.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have minutes for Thursday, December the 12th, 2019. May I have a positive motion? Ms. Emerton, with a second by Ms. Hickok. Are there any additions or deletions or edits or seeing none? Is there any objection to approval of the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved, and we'll move on to the special order of business disclosures. Are there any disclosures for this evening? Mr. Smythe.
In light of not attending the previous meeting, I just want to abstain from the vote for the consent agenda.
Okay. Ms. Eicher?
I similarly was absent from the December 12th meeting and will abstain from voting on the resolutions.
Anybody else? Okay. Then, moving on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of all matters before the board that do not require a public hearing, and all items are approved by motion without debate. Can I have a positive motion? Please. Ms. Hickok and Ms. Emerton. Seconds. Does anybody wish to remove anything from the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to approval of the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved, and we'll move on. I've had a request to reorder the public hearings portion of the agenda to accommodate staff. Can I have a motion to do that, please? Mr. Smythe. So the reordering is to move case 2 to be heard before the first case. And is there any objection? No objection. So it's reordered. And we will hear the first case, which is not a variance, so I'll read that afterwards. Case 2020-0007. Petitioner is the Municipality of Anchorage Planning Department. So could we hear from staff, please?
Thank you. So this is primarily a housekeeping ordinance, but it affects each board and commission that the planning department staffs slightly. So common practice is for each of our boards and commissions to have a 9-member body for full membership. Unfortunately, in code, at some point, it was only ever written out for 2 of the boards and commissions that the 9-member requirement applies. So this ordinance is intended to fix that and do some housekeeping. So it does the following 3 things. 1, adds the 9-member requirement to each board and commission, standardizes the membership and quorum requirements language for each board and commission, and then moves the membership and quorum requirements from Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations to actual Chapter 2, the Boards and Commissions chapter. So it doesn't make any wild substantive changes to the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals text in code in terms of their processes and membership. But we wanted to make sure that each board and commission had the opportunity to see it before we finalize it and to bring it to the assembly. So would appreciate your vote on that tonight. And in front of you, just to clarify, you have the first page, just a brief summary of what's before you. Then you have the assembly ordinance and the assembly memorandum, both of which will eventually go to the assembly. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? notice of public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing, and does anyone from the public wish to comment or about reordering portions or moving regulations to code, and anybody at all? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and the matter rests with the board. Now can I do it? Okay. Is there any objection? Does anyone want to speak? No. There is a motion. State the motion. We need to state a motion. Ms. Iker?
If I'm understanding correctly, you wish the board to approve the changes?
Correct. If you could move to approve them, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Then I so move.
Ms. Emerton still seconds.
I second.
Now, is there any objection? Seeing none, we agree. Or however it goes. All right. The other case used to be case 1, is variance hearing. And so according to regulation, I am to read the procedure. Chair shall introduce the variance and explain the procedure to be followed. The board shall hear and rule on any objections to the sufficiency of notice. The staff will present a brief outline of the variance, and board members and the applicant may then ask questions of the staff through the chair. The applicant has a total of 10 minutes to present their case and may reserve time for rebuttal. Throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests upon the applicant to convince the board by a preponderance of evidence that the variance should be granted. The board members and the staff may then ask questions of the applicant through the chair. The hearing shall then be open to the public, and representatives of groups have 5 minutes, individuals have 3 minutes. Time is kept by the secretary. The display at the front will be green to within 1 minute of the time allowed, then will turn yellow. At this time, you should begin to sum up your testimony. At the end of the time allowed, the light will turn red and a tone will sound. All persons who testify may be questioned by board members, the staff, and the applicant. On the conclusion of the public testimony, the staff, followed by the applicant, shall have the right of rebuttal. The chair will then close the public hearing and the matter rests with the board. Any action of the board shall require the favorable vote of a majority of the fully constituted board. The fully constituted board shall be all members of the board, including vacancies not excused for conflict of interest. For a variance to be granted, all 8 standards must be met. Every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face that it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and that the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal to Superior Court. Okay, so with that, we will continue with the first case. Case is case 2020-0005. The petitioners are Frank and Aaron Whitmer, who are in attendance. So, will the staff please present the case? Oh, wait, I forgot.
Yeah.
Hold on. Will the staff please describe the notice given in this case?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On November 19th, 2019, 110 public hearing notices were sent out to neighboring property owners. As of the 1 public comment and support had been received, and then 3 letters of support were submitted with the application. The Hillside Community Council did not comment.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, will the staff present a brief, the outline, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for a variance from AMC 2106020 to allow a detached garage to encroach 8.5 feet into a required 50-foot rear setback in the R6 district. The structure is an enclosed storage shed measuring 542 square feet attached to a detached garage measuring 1,100 square feet. The enclosed storage shed encroaches into the setback and is the portion of the structure requesting the variance. None of the reviewing agencies objected to the variance. And in the matters of the findings, staff finds that standard A is not met. There are no exceptional physical circumstances of the property. There are no streams, wetlands, or steep slopes on the lot. The lot size is 49,500 square feet, and the garage was constructed by a previous owner on the flattest part of the lot that didn't require excavation or retaining walls. Staff finds that standard B has not been met. There are no physical circumstances of the lot creating an exceptional or undue hardship. The lot is a conforming lot of record, and the existing house meets the required setbacks. The garage was constructed sometime in the mid-90s with the existing zoning setbacks by a previous owner. Standard E, staff finds that's partially been met. There are no stream, wetland, or slope creating a peculiar physical condition of the land, and the encroachment is the result of construction by a previous owner. The detached garage does not meet the required 50-foot rear setback in the R6 district, but the current owner purchased the home in 2017, and the garage was built sometime between May 1993 and May 1997 through aerial photo interpretation. The current owner discovered the encroachment when they applied for a building permit to construct an addition to the single-family home. Standard D has been met. There are no structure separation violations. There have been no objections from the neighbors or from the Hillside Community Council. There are 3 letters of support from the neighbors, including the most affected neighbor to the west. And the distance between that affected neighbor is approximately 80 feet. Also, the encroachment is not visible from that neighbor because the vegetation separating the existing structures exists. Standard E, staff find that is met. The requested variance will not change the character of the R6 large lot zoning district. Granting the rear setback encroachment will not permit either a principal or accessory use other than what is already permitted under the current code. Standard F, staff finds that has been met. There are no identified health or safety issues with the property. The owner is seeking relief from the rear setback requirement in order to enjoy the use of an existing garage and storage shed. Garages and sheds are permitted structures in the R6 district. Standard G, the variance is not related to ADA accessibility. And in the matters of Standard H, staff finds that is not met. The need for the variance was created by the siding of the garage location when it was constructed by a previous owner. There is lot area to build a detached garage that meets the setbacks. However, the encroachment is small and appears to be de minimis in nature. Page 19 is a good graphic representation of what portion of that shed is encroaching into that rear setback. And with that, the department finds that approval criteria A, B, C, and H are not met, and therefore staff recommends denial of the variance. But if after a public hearing, the board finds all 8 standards are substantially met, then the approval should be subject to conditions 1 and 2, which are found on page 5 and 6 of the staff packet. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the petitioner is here as well. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Okay. Are there any questions of staff by the applicant? Indicates not. Excuse me. Will the applicant or the applicant's representative please come forward? State your name for the record.
I'm Frank Whitmer.
I'm Erin Whitmer.
And please present your case.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the board members for your time and service. We understand this application can be a bit lengthy, and also thank you to the municipal planning employees that have helped us along the way. And of course, thanks for giving us some time to present our case. The reason for our application, it arose, we purchased the home a few years ago, and we're planning to have an addition, and in that process, we realized that we've got this non-compliance issue, and so let me just address the few key issues here, right? So with regards to standards A, B, and C, We think that we do have a natural topography issue here that makes this property a bit different in terms of the sloping nature of the property. So there are other lots in the area are flatter. The houses are on top of what's probably a glacial moraine, and the street that we're on, Bryan Street, is flat until a bit of a hill at the end. And so where our house is, we're on sort of a flatter section up top, but then it slopes considerably down towards the back of the property. And you can see that on that topographic map that Ryan mentioned there on page 19, I think it was. And so, the garage is built on the flattest part of the parcel in back. And then just in terms of the steepness of the hill, it's definitely got a pretty good pitch to it. Our kids have been enjoying it quite a bit, sledding, and it is such that with a sledding run they can get plenty of speed. Where if they're not careful, they'll hit the building. So there's definitely some pretty good slope to that terrain there. And so, I think that addresses the concern for those standards A, B, and C. Moving on to standard H, that was found to be not met. We do make extensive use of the storage shed in question here. And so if we're forced to remove it, it would certainly infringe on our use of the land. I also wanted to draw attention to the report that indicated that the de minimis nature of this violation. It's just that back corner of the shed. We're at the worst part of the violation. It's 8 feet over, but of course it's that sort of triangular portion that you can see in the maps there. The nearest neighbor is quite a distance away. The nearest structure is approximately 80 feet away. As was mentioned in the report, none of the neighbors, we went around and talked to them, and they of course said, "Oh, what's the problem here? That thing's been there for years." And so anyway, it was easy to get them to ask them to write letters of support for this case. And again, given the vegetation, it's difficult to see this structure from particularly the west and the north. Those neighboring properties, there's less vegetation to the south, but of course there's no infraction in that direction. And again, just to highlight, right, this is an existing condition estimated to be built sometime in the early 1990s. We don't have any plans on modifying that structure or expanding that garage. And of course, this property has been through at least 2 prior sales without this problem being noticed. We, of course, in hindsight, we blew it, and we didn't catch it during the sale process either. But of course, we learn, and now we know to look for these things in the future. But hopefully, with our petition tonight, you can help us continue to have the full use of our property and structures.
Thank you. You have over 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I think we can cede the remaining of our time for questions from the board.
Questions are not included in rebuttal.
Oh, okay.
So are there any questions of the applicant by the board? Anybody? No questions? Oh, Mr. Hale.
I should ask a question. So it looks like from the topography that it's not super steep. I mean, typically when we're looking at the slopes being a factor, they're really a factor. You have to dig into the hill quite a bit, and it looks like this garage, could be sited a lot of places and be in conformance. So I guess I'm wondering, how do we come to the conclusion that it's onerous?
Sorry,
Slopes?
your question is, how do you come to the conclusion that what?
Yeah, how are we to justify the slopes? It seems like a pretty typical slope for a lot of lots in town. I mean, my slope could look like this, and I could build just about anywhere on it. So, I mean, we have to justify our positions and our decisions, so I'm just wondering, how is it that the slope is inhibiting to the construction or the placement of your buildings?
I would say that it's more of a slope than exists on any of the neighboring properties. And I think, if I recall the standard, it was asking about, exceptions to the lots in the area. I agree it's not a cliff, but it is different from the neighboring lots. You want to add to that?
It would certainly, you're right, with enough excavation, right, you can move the building anywhere you want it to. But in terms of, using the land to its best purposes as is, without, having big scars all over the place, then this is the natural siting for it.
Mr. Hale? You're done? Okay. Mr. Smythe?
Through the chair, so I intend to support the variance myself, but I just want to ask a question to you. We've seen things like this before in front of this board. You said you were the second purchasers since this, probably, that this has happened.
Probably the third. There's been at least two prior
Yeah.
transactions that we know of.
And then it was brought to light when you submitted for an addition, correct?
Yeah, and we haven't submitted our building permit yet, but we discovered it during the process.
When I commend you, thanks for following the rules and applying for an application for an addition. But other as-built surveys were done, but who brought, this is for our own education, I think, who brought to light the setback and your survey?
Well, our architect was who we were working with, Blue Sky Architecture.
Ann Severin.
Ann Severin's her name. And so she raised this point initially, and initially she said, oh, this is going to be no problem. It's going to be grandfathered in. It's been there so long. And we said, great. And then we went through the process, and I forgot the terminology now, but the municipality did an evaluation and determined it was in non-compliance based on the historical aerial imagery, and that it was actually constructed after that ordinance was passed. And we said, oh no. And so now we're here.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. I guess I forgot to ask if you had any questions.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Now, I ask if there's anyone in the public that wishes to testify in this case, but there isn't anybody else in the public. So, we'll move on. And does the staff have any rebuttal?
No, ma'am.
And does the applicant wish to use any of their 5 minutes left over? They indicate not. So we'll close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Smythe.
Do I get to speak now?
You need to state the motion.
I motion that we approve the variance with the conditions put forth by the staff.
And seconded by Ms. Hickok. So would you speak to your motion, Mr. Smythe?
As I said earlier, through the chair, I intend to support the motion. I think that we've seen this before. The point I believe the conditions, the way they presented them for the cases meet, and I think this is an example of what I think the board is put here to do in situations like this.
Would you mind addressing the standards, please?
Standard A, I agree with the petitioners' clarification there, and I do believe that that it is met. Condition B, considering that the physical circumstances are that the shed exists, and that is a hardship that would be put on them to tear down and rebuild. And I don't think that it's self-imposed, and I think that considering that it's been two additional sales since this, that it was that is met. D and E were already met per staff requirements, along with F, G, H. I think that this is the minimum variance, considering that it is de minimis as put and existing already.
Thank you. Ms. Hickok?
I also intend to support the motion. I just wanted to add in the findings that I find in my review of page 19, the topographic survey, that the topography ranges in steepness between 20 and 33% in some areas. So I think that does meet the standard of physical circumstance.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? If not, then is there any objection to approval? Do you want to vote? Oh, it's up to me? Ooh. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion passes and the variance is granted. As you can see, it's supposed to be really formal, but it's not really. Reports. I don't have any reports. Does the secretary have anything? No. We don't have a committee, so that's okay. Board members, any comments? No comments? Okay. Is there a motion for adjourn? Please. Ms. Emerton and Ms. Eicher seconds, so we are adjourned.